Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unshackled for Life. We're unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. And I'm your host, John Green. Hey, so in today's episode, everybody, we're going to be talking about what is the difference between being broke and being poor. How to know the difference and how to change either situation. All right? So, welcome to another episode. I want to jump right in. In today's episode, we're going to define what it means to be broke, what it means to be poor. Excuse me. And I'll share the moment that I realized that I was broke and how that moment put me in a position to where I knew I wanted change, and how, kind of what steps I took afterwards to change my ways. All right. So let's jump in. Starting off with the definition. Are you broke or are you poor? Hopefully you're neither, but how would you even know? Do you know the difference? So I'm going to talk about, what the difference is to me. When it comes to, am I an expert? Well, I've been broke and I've been poor, according to, some of the financial people that I look up to. So I'm going to go over some of the definitions from my heroes who I mentioned in a previous episode: Dr. Boyce Watkins, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dave Ramsey, and John Hope Bryant. So just to kind of give you some definitions here. And their definitions are very similar. So John Hope Bryant, he basically says that being broke is temporary, whereas poor is a mindset. Dr. Boyce Watkins, he says broke can be strategic, meaning you can control that, whereas being poor is systemic. And he actually has an acronym for poor. And he says that poor stands for passing over opportunities repeatedly, just constantly making bad choices that keep you in that position. All right. Dr. Claude Anderson, he doesn't really talk a lot about being broke, but he kind of says, when you're poor, it means you're powerless, without ownership. And once you change that, then you can stop being poor. And then you have you have Dave Ramsey. And he basically says that, broke is a math problem, whereas poor is behavior. So, when you kind of put all of these together, it again, is very similar. Being broke is basically, it's just a money issue, basically a lack of money. Whereas being poor involves your actions, your mindset. It's the things that lead to you being broke. And if you stay in a poor mindset, you're going to stay being broke. That's how I look at it. So at Unshackled for Life, we're all about changing that mindset, that poor mindset. We need to get away from that. We need to stop, and there's all kinds of things that lead to it. All right. That's a whole other episode. Dr. Claude Anderson, he talks about inappropriate behavior. I love that term. And it's like, once you study that, like it's crazy. Like there's so much, inappropriate behavior that keeps people in a place of being poor. And that needs to change. But anyways, I digress. Let's get back to being broke versus being poor. So, as I stated earlier, I'm going to share the moment that I realized I was broke. I was already poor. I had a poor mindset. I'm going to go back to the year 2012. And it was the, just to kind of tell you about this moment, don't laugh at me because some of you are going to say, oh, you aren't even that broke. it's like you weren't that broke, like you weren't homeless or anything. And and I think when it comes to being broke, I think it's kind of like pain tolerance. I think some people can handle a little more brokenness than others, and it's all about your tolerance for it. And I'm not I'm not that one. So I'm not him, as they say. I'm not trying to win the contest of who was more broke. If you won that contest, hey man, great for you. You win. I will gladly give you whatever crown you want for being the most broke individual. But look, when it comes to being broke, again, it's your personal financial situation. So for me, like I said, year was 2020. It was 2012. I was working at my second school, and I decided, basically it was after school one day. I'm a teacher, so it was one day after school. I decided to go to the restroom. School was out, and I go to the restroom. The school had just gotten this new like update where they gave it's like we had some sort of bond work was done after after an election, and they changed our windows, they changed the doors in the school, and they did some other stuff, kind of fixed up my science room and all of that. Whatever, it was cool. Whatever. So anyway, I go to the restroom, right? So I'm sitting in the restroom, not sitting. I'm in the restroom. Yeah, yes, TMI, I know. But I'm in the restroom and, do my business, wash my hands. And I go to the door and realize the door is locked from the inside. So I'm locked in the bathroom. And not only am I locked in the bath, well, actually, no, I'm locked in the bathroom. No problem, no problem. And I bang on the door a little bit, hoping somebody walking by, because it would open from the other side. They apparently the wonderful people who had updated the school, they number one, they hung the doors on the wrong side, so they were all opening backwards. But then also, you know, they had messed up the lock to the men's restroom, to the men's staff restroom. So knock on the door, nobody comes. I was like, okay, no problem. Pick up my trusty cell phone and think to myself, all right, I'll just call the school secretary. I know she's still downstairs and she's awesome. She'll just send somebody up. No worries. So I go, I dial the school, find the school phone number in my phone. I call it, ring, the phone rings one time. And the next thing I hear is a little tone, and your phone call is being forwarded to Sprint Financial Services. And at that moment, I just said, oh, shit. Because it wasn't the first time I'd heard that message, and I knew what that message meant. So it meant that the bill was not paid. So I went ahead and said, all right, let me see how much it is. I just got paid. So, all right, let's see what it is. So when they, talk to the person at Sprint, and they tell me that it is about a $400 phone bill. And I thought to myself, yeah, I could pay this $400 phone bill. But if I pay it, then there's going to be some things that probably don't get paid this month. There's going to be some other things that don't get paid. So at that moment, I made a choice, and I just kind of said, you know what? Screw it. I said, nope, I won't be paying that today. And I hung up. All right. So let me pause for a moment, give you a little more background information about my life at this time. So at this time, my marriage it sucked. It was, going down the drain. My ex-wife, she had, married at the time, she had one bill, and that was the phone bill. I had two stepdaughters at the time, as well as my own, as well as my little biological daughter, who was pretty young at the time. And, part of the frustration with this cell phone issue was my ex-wife at the time, she had a work phone. So she really didn't give a damn about this phone, about the Sprint lines, even though that was both her daughter's lines and my line. So she would let the bill kind of go in and out sometimes. And because I was considered the primary account holder, it was always my phone that would get sent to Sprint Financial Services. While everybody else, they would still get to use their cell phones and do whatever they did, right? So I was the only one impacted by by her not paying the bill. So go back to the bathroom for a moment. Back to my restroom scene. So I'm locked in the restroom. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I could use my cell phone, my worthless, non-connected cell phone. I could use it to bust out the windows. Since I was out, I was able to look out and see that the football players and, they were walking by, and I was like, I can get one of the football players' attention. They could go get somebody to open the door for me. Yeah, it would cost the school one of its new windows, but hey, I could do that, right? And then I thought, I could, you know, that would work. That the phone really didn't mean anything to me at that point. I don't need the phone. I could bust the window down, bust the window open, and I'd be able to holler down and get myself out of this situation, right? And I thought about some other things in the restroom for that brief moment. But then I said, you know what? Let me try knocking again. So I started beating on the door a little bit harder this time with my cell phone, since, again, it wasn't really worth much at this point, since I couldn't make a phone call. So it wasn't doing its job. So I started beating on the door, and finally, one of the math teachers came and unlocked the door and got me out of this situation. So this was my moment. I was stuck in a bathroom, and some of you, if you're one of these judgmental folks, you could be sitting here playing the what they call that, being the couch quarterback. You could sit here and try to say, well, John, you could have gone ahead and paid it, and then you could have just, moved some money around, and since you just gotten paid, you can move some money around, and you and your ex-wife could have worked it out, right? No, no, that wouldn't have worked. The again, being broke, man, like when you don't have the money, because again, that was her only bill. Again, not to point blame, but that was her only bill for the household. And at that moment, I just kind of said, enough's enough. So once I was out of the restroom, packed my stuff up, went home. Actually, I didn't go home. I went to a cell phone store, and I got myself a new cell phone with another company. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to buy another phone, but whatever. They were having a deal, so I went ahead and got a new cell phone, and I went home that day with my new cell phone. And it only had my account on it, only my phone line. I wasn't too worried about the stepdaughter's phone lines at that point, because I was like, well, maybe they can go talk to their mom about that, because that's not a me issue anymore. So this moment of being broke, it really made me say, okay, I need to do better, because I'm a grown man and I can't be stuck in a damn bathroom without a way to get out. Because the shit makes no sense when you think about it. I'm a grown ass man and I'm stuck in the restroom, and I can't even make a phone call to get out of the restroom. Help is literally probably 30 linear feet away from me making a phone call to the secretary that's right downstairs. And I wasn't able to do that. So, all right. Now that I've shared that story, let's talk about like what other things were, what kind of other things were going on. So other things at this moment that were going on were, failed marriage, the cell phone not being paid for the who knows umpteenth time, right? Um, you know, feeling like a failure. There was some shame in that moment of being locked in a restroom. That's pretty damn embarrassing. Like having to beat on the door, and even the math teacher being like, "Well, why didn't you just call down to the office?" Long story, right? And you know, basically, what I want you to understand is you don't have to be broke. You can change your mindset. Because while I was in that restroom, I made a choice that I'm not going to keep doing this shit anymore. Like, really, I'm done with it. So I made a choice to no longer keep myself in this place of being broke. All right. And, one thing I want you to understand, because again, we're going to have different situations. I realize there are people who have it way worse than me. There are people who are homeless. There are people who, they're having to make some very dangerous decisions in order to survive. I get it. Again, not my risk tolerance, not my pain tolerance of being broke. I don't want to be at that point. I did not want to be at that point. So, here's what I need you to understand. If you're broke, that's okay. You're good. You can change that. I can help you change being broke. But if you're poor, if you're constantly, doing things, if you have this mindset of wanting to be that way and thinking that way is okay, I can't help you. There aren't too many people who are going to be able to help you get out of being poor if that's your mindset. And, you know, if you feel poor, we can work on the mindset. Like if you are, I take that back. It's not that I can't help you. I can, but you need to understand that we really need to work on your mindset. It's not a financial problem. That's a mindset problem. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm working on something currently with, through Unshackled for Life. I'm debating on if I want to have like a detox situation where we work weekly, maybe like a 7-week challenge sort of thing where we work on, changing mindset and being broke. So kind of getting rid of the poor and the broke mindset. Or maybe just do a quick little 7-day challenge where we just do some easy things that are quick fixes, quick changes, that you can do. So that's what I'm working on. All right. But anyways, hey, I may have shared too much with that one. Told you about my private times in the restroom. But anyways. www.unshackledforlife.com www.unshackled4life.com. Let's change it.